Hello, I'm Jonathon Wright, your president of the Vivit worldwide community. I'm also a Chief Technology Officer here in the UK for a company called Digital Assured. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about cognitive engineering, intelligent enterprise RPA adoption, and I'm going to give you some case studies, and I'm also going to give you some sneak previews into the Micro Focus RPA tool. So a little bit of background about myself. I recently did a TED Talk on cognitive learning. So my background is in artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, and also automation. The latter I've been doing since the 90s, so I've had over 20 years of experience in the automation space. As you can see from the bottom left, where my LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in/automation, and I'll take you to my profile. So what is cognitive learning? On the right-hand side, you might have noticed there's a picture, because I was asked for a biopic of myself. Now, you can see that the picture's been manipulated, and I guess most of you have got PowerPoint or have used PowerPoint in the past. Now, if you want an idea of what computer vision does, just right-click on any image that you've got in PowerPoint and then go to the alt text. Now, this will be automatically generated by some of the WinML capabilities that are built straight into your computer. So as you can see, the tag that it automatically generated at the bottom says a person standing in front of a building. And then the second one, after manipulating the image using computer vision, it says a person standing inside a building. So it understands the context. So that's part of this, this cognitive learning and the ability of cognitive thinking for computers to be able to think for themselves. So I'm really excited today to talk to you about how potentially you can start applying some of this intelligence to your RPA capabilities. Now, there's obviously a quick disclaimer. RPA isn't anything new, and it's quite well established as far as the operational side. However, for most of you who've been on the ADM track earlier this week, you will have been familiar with some of the automation capabilities in the shift left landscape, so the development landscape, so test automation tools like UFT, and how they're bringing computer vision using some of the new AI capabilities that are built straight in to manage things like your DOM repositories and your object repositories. Now, on the right-hand side, the operational side, and what I refer to as shift right, there's very established RPA tools in this space. And there's also some really extremely capable tools within the Microsoft suite, which I'm going to talk about, what can leverage both sides, the UFT and the operations side for the orchestration. I'm also going to talk about the layer across the top, which is business process automation. Now, this is the task that you do every single day. These could be taking some data out of your ERP system or your CRM. You might do some Power Pivot or a pivot table and take some data and give somebody a report or provide some kind of insight. Now, this technique will take a number of digital interactions. So what I call the digital grind, which is things like checking your emails, replying to emails, going through and pulling out reports, project management office kind of tasks where people are saying, give me a status on this, or even transferring files through a number of different steps to onboard something. All these require human intelligence to actually do it. And what we're looking about here, talking about in this session, is augmenting that intelligence using business process automation or the Micro Focus RPA solution. So I mentioned digital grind, and this is a slide that I did in September at a keynote which I did in Finland around robotic process automation and also shift right in the AI operations. So you might have heard of AI ops, and this is where you're starting to take intelligence learning from the right-hand side, and we'll discuss this later. But also, I think the left-hand side also has a lot of learning, and those are kind of those activities that you may be doing every day in the development lifecycle, which you could automate. But I also think there's a huge amount of, once the application goes live, that you can actually understand what activities should be replaced by a bot or an intelligent augmented assistant. So, is these activities really the best use of your workforce. I referred to on the previous slide around that there was 211 years every day spent in the US alone, just people checking their email. And if we look at the McKinsey information that you're seeing here, that amount of time that you're spending referring to 28% of reading and answering emails could just be considerably reduced. There's been a trend to move to enterprise collaboration platforms like Slack or other Teams from Microsoft. Part of it is making that data more dynamic and making it so it's no longer a role-specific task where you're having to, one person has to do testing, one person has to do development. So searching and gathering for information, asking the project management if they know if there's a status update. Part of this is a more of a collaborative approach. So having a scrum master who's dealing with this kind of stuff. So there's an opportunity. So how do we get to leverage this opportunity? Well, partially, you've got to identify what the repetitive task is and then prioritize the potential business value of actually replacing it with an RPA task. Now, the great news in kind of the second stage is that there's so many reusable, templates. There's already this effort that we've invested on the left-hand side with UFT scripts, which maybe, drive a particular business application. And on the right-hand side, in the operations space, we've already created tasks that will do things like send APIs, send messages, do like under the hood kind of stuff that, you might not be able to have automated within your shift left side of things. So combining them both, let's take something as simple as SAP for once, or actually as complex. You may go into SAP GUI, which is the standalone client, or you might be going to a website version of SAP HANA or something, and you might be doing a number of different activities, which you could quite easily automate. And then there's some tasks, some ETL tasks, or there's some kind of messages that need to be sent, which potentially require you to go to the database or something else, which you can also do. So bringing all that in together makes it very repetitive. It also makes it something that can be done in the background and mimic those activities and free up your day. And there's so many enterprise technologies that you can leverage. Here's just a sample of just ones that, are very popular. But, you you context switch between some of these tools. And by combining a number of steps and then, say, for instance, outputting stuff into Slack channel, gives you that capability where you can remove some of that repetitive end-to-end business process automation. So the real advantage is high speed, repetitive, doesn't make mistakes for business critical tasks. It mimics and, if not enhances, an activity that's been done by human. It also can do the heavy lifting for you and helps you be able to scale your business. So less time on spreadsheets, more time actually doing business valuable tasks. So, Micro Focus RPA. Let me give you a bit of a glimpse into this. I know none of the speakers have talked about it on the first day. I really wanted to open it up to kind of give you a bit of a sneak preview and how you can utilize it. And this is stuff that we're doing today. So I started off back in the 90s with a tool called XRunner, which was the pre-tensed application that was WinRunner. So that came very much before we started automating on Windows applications. WinRunner was replaced by a tool called QTP, Quick Test Professional. This was then morphed into the UFT suite, which we know and love today. Also, the community was founded on a lot of the ITOM-based products, so the kind of operations orchestration. And part of that is the incredibly rich tools that Micro Focus have now got in the operation space. So by combining those two together and that 30 years of experience in automation and thousands of workflows straight out of the box, we've got what is an incredibly powerful application called Micro Focus RPA. Previously, we talked about repetitive, error-prone, time-consuming based activities, which have a massive value. But I also want to refer to some of the legacy is your legacy, which was a blog which I wrote many years ago, which was around the value of heritage systems. So taking these heritage systems, which Micro Focus are incredibly well known for, and converting that unstructured data into structured data that you can do stuff like RPA activities with. So where does the Micro Focus RPA tool, how does it help? Partly, I think this is important for a business user or a subject matter expert to kind of understand how would they interact with this product. Well, most likely they interact with it through the studio, which makes it very visual, allows you to see process flows and identify improvements. You can then build using building blocks or jigsaw pieces your particular process which you want to automate. Now, for those who are very familiar with the UFT product, then really you're going to see a lot of similarities there, but you're also going to see the web-based interface that they use. And then we move on to the robot, which does the heavy lifting. So that's the one that actually does the interactions. That's where you've got your portal to be able to kind of deal with scheduling these events, which is the orchestration side of things. And these are all separate capabilities that help split it from business to people who are actually writing the scripts. And then we take you on that journey. So, easy to use Design Studio. Like I said, nice easy flows. You've got the recorder, which really helps. So you can record a particular session. The example given there is around the SAP recorded session. So that might be the SAP GUI script API, which is capturing it at an API level. It might be doing it from a UFT kind of user interface perspective. Then you've got all these connections. You've got the capabilities, which is those hundreds out of the box, pre-done, pre-packaged operations orchestration capabilities, which you can drag onto this canvas. And obviously you could put switches or different flows depending on responses from the previous task. We've also got the scalability. You've got the scalability to scale up when you want to be able to run more of these activities or scale down. And then you've got the centralized security. So you can log in with your credentials, your single sign-on, and you can have people who have only access to certain things. So this is like encryption sensitive data, so your GDPR, your PII data. It also makes it roles-based in credentials, so I can access certain systems, you can access other systems, and maybe the bot has to have very similar ones. So one user will be an approver in SAP, like a manager, and the other one will be somebody who creates the initial activity. And then we've got this ability to build in the advanced recognition, as you've seen from the ADM tracks. If not, you can get that on demand. That now uses AI or use computer vision to be able to self-heal some of those object repositories to make it more robust, make the script more robust, because it's one of the challenge of RPA is failing bots. So lots of features. And, I think what's really important, and I know I want to give you some kind of insight into how, you can actually go off and do this with some use cases that I've done over the last couple of years. And I did this same presentation when I was in the South Africa Universe event for Micro Focus. So I want to share you some of the collateral which they had. And I think this really made the business case to me around just the sheer growth. Now, we know that the RPA automation kind of landscape isn't anything new, but we know that there's a huge investment in spend. And I think this is important because this shows not only it's a market trend, but it's something which you can get some numbers behind and get some force behind to actually understand that there is some opportunities and some savings. So go and check that stuff out. The links are in the bottom left-hand corner. So first use case, and just literally as Brexit has just happened in the UK, I've just spent the last 2 years working for the UK government, helping them prepare for Brexit. Now, this was a lot around performance, but it was also around RPA, around how do we do more with less? How do we keep the same amount of agents as far as humans who are able to deal with cases, but actually be able to deal with the 5 times increase that we were expecting based on people going in, wanting to understand what that meant for HMRC, what that meant for their patents. And I'm going to give you an example here as a sample for the Patents Office. So when I was initially asked to come in, part of it is they say, can you help us spot process improvements? Now, this is something that's not exactly out of the box. There's lots of process mining tools that can kind of tell you, based on what it's seeing people's activities to do, these are the ones that potentially would be the high value, but also are done so often. That could be reports run, top 5 reports run, or whatever it may be. So part of it is understanding and normalizing data from a number of different sections, and then understanding where you potentially could have the process automation. And that could be through a number of different divisions or teams that pass information backwards and forwards. But also what we want to do is monitor what those processes would be doing, create the flowcharts, understand where potentially there's improvements to be made, and that's where we can continuously improve our process and also our RPA processes. So really simple flow here. I guess most of you are used to this email. We talked about the digital grind. So when you wanted to file a patent, the way that they used to do it was everything was by paper. Now, thankfully, they created a gov.uk domain, which allows you to fill in a form, an email comes in with the necessary data that you need. So it has data that it captured, but also any PDFs you've uploaded. So that could be what the pattern looks like, what the design looks like. Now, this would typically be information that could have been printed off and people could have been looking at it or comparing a particular pattern or a design to see if it matches anything in the back catalogue. But what we're talking about is how could we do RPA to take some of these activities. So we know we can deal with email, SMTP. We know we can use tools to get information from PDFs. So OCR technologies like Tesseract will allow you to extract all that data and put it into something easy as like, let's say, Excel, for the example. Now, once you've got that data or you've got that metadata, so you've got unstructured data kind of turned into structured data, you can then use it to use the proprietary built .NET or whatever platform, enterprise platform you've got. You can then search for, keywords that have been appeared in this document and say, oh, wait a second, something similar is already being done. So either we need to create a new, reference to say this is the pattern, and then we need to email some other people. So that could be external people like lawyers, and we also could be potentially looking at collating this data as we go through this journey. So this is a very simple example which we've just gone through. And like I said, you can easily go email to file system, OCR, export to CSV, look at the pattern legacy system. It could even be mainframe, and then you also have some service management tool in place which will do a whole stack of operations that expect people to complete cases and stuff like that. And then once it's finished, you might be putting this information out to Slack. So very simple flow, very easy to automate with Micro Focus RPA workflow. So, but the numbers which I want to kind of give you here is around once we were able to do these flows and, deal with different types of, successes or failures depending on what part of the process they're in, the savings were huge. So those 5 times increase in throughput, which we were expecting, which was over 1,000 patterns a week, I think it was, they're able to deal with that increased throughput with the same amount of resource pool using the RPA tool as a way of augmenting their capabilities. So huge opportunity there, and it just gives you a great showcase of what you can do. But I think it's worth at this point just backtracking a little bit here to kind of say, well, what are these kind of feeds? Because even places like the government have not only emails, they have project management tools, they have their own internal news feeds, they have social media platforms, they have different inputs and outputs. So we're all used to using Agile, lots of data in different data sources, whether that be an Excel spreadsheet or a file of some description, and we're used to their own packaged tools, not just websites. And also they're used to having to deal with and manage all this data to be continuously updated. And that's kind of one of those digital grind activities that we wanted to get rid of. But it also means we can aggregate a huge amount of structured and unstructured data and act on it and spin that data up to power the bots. So when an update comes back from a customer or a client, it can then trigger another event. So much value in this. And all of this data on the left-hand side, which is extendable and very easy to integrate into the tool set, can connect into this tool set to allow you to spot and improve things. So, for instance, as you're going through a flow, you might say, well, why are we updating the data there on this proprietary system when we could update it in batch later on? You may notice that as you're going through, and it saves more time, less calls to the back end, etc., etc., extra activities that done. Do you need this information reported daily, or can this be bulked up to when it's actionable? There's lots of different opportunities there. So process mining, incredibly important. There is great tools out there like Disco that also can be help to fill in any gaps within the tool set, and are use just standard business process flows to understand where correlate back to back-end processes and identify new opportunities. So great opportunities around that and process mining. And really what we're trying to do with this RPA capabilities, we're wanting to perform the same or improved processes faster. We're trying to maximize the value of your resources, your people, and your processes. And also, more importantly, which is kind of the whole point of what automation was in the first place, is eliminate waste, but also human error. So, being able to not just mimic, but improve on that from humans is incredibly useful. So the next case I'm going to give you, which I know is slightly the opposite end, but it's something that I'm doing right now in the background, is stuff that I've done while I was based out in Santa Clara in Silicon Valley, and I was helping some of the organizations that you probably deal with on a daily basis, whether it be the phone company, whether it be the payments, whether it be the social media platforms. All those kind of organizations have similar kind of challenges. What I wanted to kind of do with this slide, and if you go watch the TED Talk, you'll get a better context, is really that none of this is new. Part of that slide on the left-hand side, 1939, and for those guys who've come across from the Hewlett-Packard enterprise community, you'll know that green shed in the background where Hewlett and Packard started iterating on building their devices. They build and test, build and test, build and test. Later on, 1950, that's just down the road from me in a place called Bletchley Park, is where Alan Turing wrote the first papers on artificial intelligence, which you see in the background there. Some incredible publications there. And, part of this is it's not new. Neither is RPA. This is not a new technology. But applying those practices of build and test, those agile approaches that we're all very used to, and applying AI or intelligence to things really helps drive the industry forwards. So a lot of what I've been doing, I'm doing it at the moment. So I'm actually in the background, I'm looking at my APM tools to see the live servers at Black Friday. I know we're closer now, based on this recording, for Christmas Day and the January sales. But I'm helping organisations prepare for performance engineering, just like we did when we were trying to help prepare for Brexit and make sure that the government could do more with less of their infrastructure, not redevelop their entire stack. What we needed them to do is just tune what they've got to get more throughput through it. So, performance engineering, and I recommend Todd DiCaprio, who's another board member, a very good close friend, his book, O'Reilly book on effective performance engineering, which you can download for free. I've been doing a lot around chaos engineering, and part of that chaos engineering, and if you think about Brexit, is, well, what is it going to be on a no deal versus what is it going to be with a deal? Part of it is you have to put those experiments in to prove that you can deal with a no deal situation as well as a deal situation. And then finally, cognitive engineering, which is kind of what I've been doing over the last few years, and is what my TED talks around, is this think, make, learn cycle. It's this feedback of the learning, so the shifting right on the right-hand side to learn and reinforce what you're doing on the left. And this is kind of something that seems to be missing. We're all very good at, putting a hypothesis down of what we think the customer are doing. But in this case, what I'm doing and tracking at the moment is real customer journeys on a retail platform as they go through and shop for Black Friday. I'm using that to automatically generate my processes. So it could be my automation scripts, it could be my performance scripts, my functional text scripts, all generated from my monitoring of the right-hand side. So using the right-hand side to create the left. But those models are real user behavior. So this is this cognitive engineering aspect. So quick intro to chaos engineering. I think I kind of helped you on that with that. Is you want to introduce change in a steady state behavior. So what you want is you want to create a baseline of something which is solid, and then you want to be able to introduce change. So in this case, what happens when it's Black Friday? What happens with systemic failure? What happens if someone pulls the plug or your Kafka messaging system streaming service goes down? How does it come back up? How does your AWS versus your Azure handle that? How your Kube instance is able to spin up more containers and actually be able to bring those services back online. So what you're doing is you're forcing those events to happen instead of waiting for them to happen in production, and then using a tool like I'm using in the background to monitor what that behavior is. So you can introduce issues in a state which you can deal with and is a steady state, and it's not the real world. So you're introducing those real world events, so Brexit happening or Black Friday, Christmas Day shopping. And then what we're able to do is we're able to automate those runs every time. So as part of your build, you're building chaos engineer scripts in there to prove, okay, unplug this, see if it comes back up. What happens if I take down the Neo4j? What happens to the graph, the knowledge graph? What happens to the data? Does it retry it later on? How does it survive in that kind of enterprise service bus kind of landscape? So this is incredibly complex, and so I think performance engineering is hand in hand. So the example of what I'm just talking about and user behavior, especially if you bring artificial intelligence into the mix, is the stack which has got there, which I talked about, Kafka and producers potentially, producing data and writing data that it captures, and then a number of consumers taking those messages off and doing cipher queries. They could be doing stuff like updating the knowledge map, building, kicking off activities. So if in this case, on the right-hand side, it's a retail application, and we use computer vision to be able to understand the image, what you've got in the screen. So part of that is trained algos that are in, say, for instance, TeslaFlow, or another tool like Microsoft Custom Vision that allows you to recognize objects. Oh, there's a handbag there. Or it might be able to say, this is a particular dress, style, or the color matching. All these different activities are things that you can do with computer vision, and then part of it is there's going to be different mappings that are generated in your knowledge graph. So, a relationship of a pattern versus a no pattern, or a particular color like turquoise, not mapping to a particular channel like eBay or Amazon or something like that. In the example of the right-hand side, which is what I'm monitoring at the moment, is the kind of capabilities where you can just pick up your camera, take a photo of something that you want to buy, and then it will do an image search on their entire back catalog across 600 different brands, and then realize that the closest thing to that particular style is this particular brand, and then recommend it to you. So this kind of capability of saying, well, actually, I like what they're wearing, or, I see a picture and I want to be able to click on it and buy that lamp, or, those items in the background. These are all capabilities that are coming through, but they're next generation AI as a service platforms, and they're incredibly difficult to performance engineer. So performance engineering, especially Black Friday, cognitive engineering, go and look at the TED Talk. I'm doing a book at the moment with O'Reilly around cognitive engineering in a lot more detail. There's also, I've just on my LinkedIn, there's an entire session around gated.ai, which is the domain. If you go to that, it will redirect you to the blog, and it gives you loads of information about all the technology that I'm talking about at the moment. And as I mentioned, part of it is things like doing more with less. So in the top right-hand corner, this is a real-time tuning capability that we introduced, which actually allows you to pass in workload. So by default, everyone uses the standard configuration for, say, for something like Mongo. And what it does is it passes the workload, and your workload, in my case, the workload is going to be different to how you're using it, and then it optimizes it based on the outcomes that you want. And this could potentially be, how quickly it recognizes some data and able to put it into a knowledge graph down in the bottom corner. So, you're able to tune that to work it. And there's lots of AI as a service providers that provide that kind of capability instead of using the default. So tuning and optimizing and learning from what's happening and what kind of workloads going through. What I did briefly with the gated AI methodology is to make it more goal orientated. So in our case, which we did before, I want to be able to identify patent designs and trademarks, and instead of somebody manually going through a whole stack of back catalogue of things that people have patented, is it would search using computer vision or OpenCV or something like that. It'd go through and pattern match to see if, you know, that Burberry pattern, which is quite unique, has existed or has already been filed before. Equally, there was a question of, you know, with endless time and endless resources, you can get there, but there's obviously a misclarification rate. So, you know, do you overtrain the algo to be better at recognizing patterns than doing something else? Or do you deal with that kind of misclarification rate of enterprise AI of kind of, you know, 80%? So then you can augment that in two ways. You can either, you know, move that to something like Amazon Turk, or, you know, you use Kaggle to allow other data scientists to create a better algo that is better at recognizing handbags or something else. Or you can kind of deal with that kind of augmented intelligence, pass it to human operators to be able to actually do it. So our ability to fail, but fail gracefully, was incredibly useful for RPA. Again, time frame. You know, if we've got 10,000 applications per day, how do we deal with 10,000 applications in that kind of scale? If the system takes too long searching for a particular image, then there's no way we're going to get those 10,000 applications through. So we need to understand a time frame which is acceptable based on a potential increased volume of growth. Secondly, you need to be able to enrich that data. We talked about knowledge graphs, but you know, the only way to get better knowledge graphs is to go off, use tools like spiders to transpose lots of different data sets, go off and do discovery of data. So, you know, part of ETL and what we've been doing in ETL for a long time is extract, transform, and load lots of different sources to create an AI-ready data lake that you can mine. So enrichment is incredibly useful to create more realistic data and also create synthetic data as well for things that don't exist already, so you can prove them. And then data, as we kind of said, you know, part of it, especially when you're doing things like image recognition, you can't use the same training data. So if you've got 10,000 images of patterns, you want to split that up to a development training set, prove it with your training algorithm, which would be a subset of completely different images. And then finally, before you release it, you want a real proving set that kind of says, yeah, that algo is completely true. It's not just overtrained for that particular set of images. So data is important. You know, we talked about the AI data lake, lots of different data sets, test data management, lots of interesting things and exciting, you know, kind of capabilities around that. So cognitive learning, in a kind of a nutshell, is, you know, is that 5% with a small percentage which is, you know, AI making a decision. A lot of it is human augmented, so it's a lot of, okay, it breaks the flow, the RPA tool ends here, you jump on, give me a capture key because I'm stuck, and, you know, it passes it to a mobile device, or it gets a human to actually then say, okay, there's an error here, I need to do this particular task because I know a subflow, and then you automate that flow into it. Understanding the structured data, understanding the entire RPA landscape as a whole. This right-hand side down here is just to give you an idea of understanding the code map of just one of the platforms that existed in the 3,000 nodes across the UK government. You know, this is just one application map. So being able to understand that data and understand the structure to then be able to kind of give you an idea of the complexity of these systems. So that's really where the challenge is. We're so used to seeing something like this, which we understand the end point, but we don't understand how that maps to lots of subsystems and lots of data in those subsystems, and upstream, downstream systems. So incredibly complex, but cognitive learning can really help. So thank you very much for watching this session. I wanted to give you a few extra things you can go off and look at in your own time. The first is on the Vivit worldwide.org blog. So I do a presidential blog, which the last one I did was around Skynet, or what we call Legion if you watch the new Terminator movies. But that shows you the difference between intelligent process automation, IPA, versus business process automation, BPA, which hopefully I've given you an idea is that top level. And then for you guys that are in the automation ADM space, I also did one around intelligent enterprise RPA and really how the tools have evolved. You can see in the top right hand corner there, you've got things like the XWIT runner, to Windrunner to UFT and how it's changed over the year and how you approach it. So go and have a look at that. Check out those 2 blogs. If you want to find out more than me, thanks. I'm going to be passing over to Joe in a second. But, I did a test talk with Joe around this topic. I've also recently done a Shift Right performance talk with him. So check out both of those links. Upcoming, and I think I kind of might have mentioned it, is every year Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas Day, and January sales. We do the top 10,000 retailers in each country across the globe, and we put that information out. So we give them scores around, performance, usability, security, etc., etc. Really great read, really interesting, because you get to see how your favorite retailers provide, and hopefully the retailer that I'm helping at the moment will survive those, and I will get some good scores on there. But yeah, it's an independent thing we do. It's made up by Todd DiCaprio, who's out in the States, and Stuart Moncrief, who deals with our APAC region, who's who runs myloadtest.com. So great to check that out if you get a chance. And if you want to contact me, there's my work email there. So jonathan.wright@digital-assured.com. Reach out, add me on LinkedIn, contact me on Twitter. Anything I can do to help, let me know. And I'm looking forward to questions and speaking to you all now.